While I was mourning my best friend's passing, my neighbor held a celebration party next door, blasting music and yelling, "Glad she's gone." I stayed silent until the cops showed up and found he was hosting an illegal event without permits, serving alcohol to minors, and running an unlicensed business. He was shut down, fined into oblivion, and evicted within 2 months, and not a single neighbor defended him. I'm not proud of what I became after Sheila died. But I don't regret it either. Sheila was my best friend. My closest friend. She lived next door to me in Richmond, Virginia for 15 years. We weren't the same age, I'm 47, she was 68, but that never mattered. After the big storm in 2017 knocked out my power, she brought over flashlights and a hot thermos. That's how it started. From there, we just got close. Some days we'd have coffee on her porch and talk about anything. Other days we wouldn't talk at all. Just sit and listen to the birds. I could be myself around her. That was rare. She never married. No kids. Same as me. She worked as a nurse for over 30 years. She had this quiet strength, you know? She never made a fuss. But if she loved you, she showed up for you. Every time. She got diagnosed last September. Pancreatic cancer. By then it was already too far gone. She didn't cry much. She didn't complain. She just asked if I'd help with her garden, and if I'd be there when it got bad. I said yes. Of course I said yes. The day she died, I stayed with her. I held her hand while the machines beeped slower and slower. She looked so small. So tired. When it stopped, the nurse looked at me and gave a small nod. I just sat there. I didn't cry right away. I couldn't. It was too big to feel all at once. That night, I went home, turned off my phone, and sat in the dark. My place felt colder. Quieter. The next afternoon, I was drinking cold coffee and trying to write something for her memorial when I heard it. Loud music. The kind that rattles your brain. Bass shaking the glass in the windows. At first I thought it was a passing car. Then it kept going. I looked outside and saw my other neighbor, Derek, setting up what looked like a full-on party. Speakers, kegs, tents, people pouring into his backyard. He was wearing sunglasses and a red tank top, even though it was barely 60 degrees out. Derek had moved in about a year earlier. He never said hello. He always had people over, loud cars, trash blowing into my yard. Sheila didn't like him either. She told me once he blasted music so loud it shook the picture frames in her hallway. She tried talking to him. He laughed in her face. After that, she started calling the non-emergency line when things got too loud. I stepped out onto my porch and called over the noise, "Hey, can you turn that down?" He turned around, grinned, and yelled, "Why?" "I'm celebrating." That nosy witch next door finally croaked. I stood there, frozen. He laughed, lifted his cup, and shouted to the crowd, "To Sheila." Finally, some peace. And they all cheered. It felt like something inside me cracked open. Not snapped. Not yet. Just cracked. I didn't yell. I didn't flip him off. I went back inside, sat down, and stared at the wall for almost an hour. I didn't eat that day. Didn't sleep either. Just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Sheila. Thinking about what he said. Thinking about what I was going to do. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not the other neighbors. Not my cousin. Not even the guy from the funeral home when he called to ask if I needed more chairs for Sheila's service. I kept it all inside. But I started watching Derek. Really watching. I noticed things. Like how his parties always had kids showing up who didn't look old enough to drink. How the trash cans were always overflowing with beer cans and liquor bottles. I saw him handing out flyers one morning from the back of his car, ads for some VIP after-hours lounge. Address was his house. I took one and kept it. I made a little file on him. Nothing fancy. Just a folder on my computer with notes, pictures, dates. Every time there was a party, I logged it. I checked public records, city permits, business licenses. He didn't have any. Not one. Not for alcohol. Not for gatherings. Nothing. I saw a pattern. Fridays and Saturdays were the big nights. His driveway would be packed. His backyard filled. Loud music. Screaming. People vomiting on the sidewalk. A girl once passed out on my lawn. I called an ambulance. She couldn't have been more than 17. And all the while, I stayed quiet. I waited until the night of Sheila's memorial. We held it at the community center. It was simple. Flowers, a slideshow, people sharing memories. A few of the neighbors came. Some nurses she used to work with. I said a few words, barely got through them. That same night, Derek threw another party. Bigger than usual. I could hear it from the community center parking lot when I drove home. That's when I made the call. Not just to the cops. I called everyone. I called the state alcohol board. I called the city about zoning violations. I sent photos to the health department, showing beer-soaked garbage bags and puke on the sidewalk. I even messaged a local news tip line. I didn't say who I was. Just gave them everything I'd collected. Around midnight, 3 cop cars showed up. A white van with city inspectors. Then another one with what looked like health code guys. The whole thing unfolded in front of my house. I watched from behind my curtains as they shut it down. They pulled minors out of the backyard. One girl was crying. Another was so drunk she couldn't stand. They found liquor bottles stashed under a kiddie pool. One of the inspectors found cash boxes in the garage. He was charging cover at the door. No receipts. No permits. Nothing. They arrested 2 people that night. Derek wasn't one of them, not yet, but they gave him a long list of violations. I overheard one officer say he'd be getting a court summons. After that, it unraveled fast. The city fined him for operating an unlicensed business. Thousands of dollars. Then the property management company got involved. Turns out Derek wasn't even the listed tenant. His cousin was. She hadn't lived there in over a year. Lease violation. Grounds for eviction. Within 2 months, he was gone. They posted the eviction notice on his door one morning. I watched him load up his car with trash bags and boxes, cursing and slamming doors. He never looked at me. Never said a word. No one came to help him move. No one offered him a place to stay. Not a single neighbor spoke up for him. They were tired too. Tired of the noise, the fights, the trash. They just needed someone to pull the trigger. I was that someone. And I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. I thought it was over after he left. But 2 weeks later, I found a note in my mailbox. No envelope. Just a folded piece of paper. All it said was, "You think you won? You don't know who you're messing with." No name. No return address. Just that. And suddenly, I was back on edge. I showed the note to my neighbor Cheryl across the street. She had lived here 20 years and always seemed to know everyone's business. Cheryl narrowed her eyes and said, "You better watch your back. Derek's uncle is someone shady. Real shady." I pressed her for details. She hesitated. Then said, "His uncle's name is Reggie. He used to run clubs in Petersburg. One of them got shut down for laundering. Another burned down, under investigation." That was news to me. The next day, I noticed a car parked across the street that I hadn't seen before. Black sedan, tinted windows. It just sat there for hours. No one got in or out. It was there again the next day. And the day after, I started taking photos. I called the non-emergency line again, gave them the plate. The dispatcher said the car wasn't reported stolen, but wouldn't tell me more. I wasn't sure if I was being paranoid or careful. Maybe both. Then, 2 nights later, my back gate was open. I always keep it locked. Always. But that night it was swinging loose in the wind. I checked the backyard. Nothing stolen. But my shed door was cracked. Inside, someone had gone through my stuff. Garden tools scattered, old boxes opened. Nothing valuable missing. Just disturbed. It was a message. I installed cameras the next day. High quality, motion triggered. I put up signs that said recording in progress. I wanted them to know I saw them now. And I didn't stop there. If Derek or his uncle thought they could scare me off, they picked the wrong guy. I doubled back into my file and started sending it out again. This time to state-level authorities. I dug up every address tied to Reggie's old businesses. Found records of fines, lawsuits, unpaid taxes. I packaged it up and sent it off to every oversight board I could find. 2 weeks later, the sedan was gone. Then I heard through Cheryl that Reggie had been visited by the State Revenue Office. One of his other properties, a so-called event space, got raided. Apparently he owed back taxes on 3 years of earnings. Thousands. Maybe more. I never got another note. No more strange cars. No more open gates. But the peace didn't come back right away. I still looked over my shoulder. Still checked the locks twice before bed. It took months before I could sit on the porch without flinching at every car engine. I didn't want revenge to follow me forever. But I couldn't pretend nothing happened. Sheila mattered. What Derek did, what he said, it was a line too far. I crossed one of my own to make sure he paid. And I'd do it again. The final turn came 6 months later. By then, the neighborhood was quiet again. No more parties. No more screaming. My garden was blooming, Sheila's roses still alive. I watered them every other day, like she asked me to in her will. One morning, I opened my front door and found a manila envelope taped to it. Inside was a photo of me, sitting on my porch, taken from across the street. Underneath was a note, handwritten in thick marker, "You're next." I took it straight to the police. This time, they didn't shrug it off. Between the old reports, the trespassing, and now this, they finally opened a case. They asked me about enemies. I told them about Derek. I told them about Reggie. They nodded. Took my statement. Promised to investigate. 3 days later, someone broke into my house. They didn't steal anything. They didn't touch the TV, the computer, nothing like that. But they smashed every photo I had of Sheila. The frames, the glass, all of it. Shattered and tossed in a pile in the center of my living room floor. That broke me in a different way. I stood there, shaking, looking at her smiling face crushed under shards of glass. That was the last piece of her I had. So I went dark. No more calls to the cops. No more emails to the city. I stopped waiting for someone else to do something. I started digging. Not online. In person. I drove out to Petersburg. Parked outside one of Reggie's so-called clubs, now boarded up. I asked around. Bought a few beers for a guy sitting on a stoop nearby. He told me Reggie was in deep. Owed money all over. Rumors of him skipping town. Said he burned a lot of bridges. I told him I was an old friend. He gave me an address. It was a small house in a crumbling part of town. Overgrown yard. Broken blinds. Looked empty. I waited across the street in my car for 3 hours. Just before midnight, a car pulled in. Derek got out. He didn't see me. I followed him the next day. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was driving an old truck, no plates, probably off the books. He made stops at weird spots, storage units, a bar behind a gas station, a trailer park just outside town. That night, I made my move. I waited until he was inside. Then I slashed the tires on his truck. Not all of them, just one. Just enough. Then I left a copy of the same photo he left on my door, except this time I wrote under it, "Your uncle's not the only one who can disappear." He got the message. The next week, Cheryl said she heard Derek left town. No goodbye, no forwarding address. Reggie, too. Some said they ran from debts. Others said worse. Me? I didn't care. The silence was enough. It wasn't long after that I started therapy. The counselor asked if I had regrets. I told him yes. Not about what I did, but about letting it eat me up the way it did. I became someone I barely recognized. I stopped trusting people. I slept with a bat by the bed. I started living like they were coming for me, even after they were gone. But I'll say this, when someone spits on the memory of the only person who ever truly showed you love, you don't just walk away. You make them feel what they made you feel. And I did. Sheila would have told me to let it go. She would have said life's too short to live in hate. But she's not here anymore. And hate, that was all I had left to give.